and gentlemen, and welcome to Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful weekend and a wonderful 14th of July in the calendar year 2025. Summer heat has gone through a lot of the Midwest, so hopefully everyone is staying cool in these treacherous weather conditions, because you're truly one of them who has to work in it and has to live in it also. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day and weekend. Lots to get to here today. First, everybody's favorite subject, and I'm going to mention this for 5 minutes because it's not worth the time of day for it. ESPN, I guess, released their QB rankings. I guess they put together a panel, and I guess they rated their top quarterbacks of whoever they think is number one, number two, yada, yada, yada. Highest ranking, lowest ranking, whatever the criteria is. I don't partake in it because I don't know what it is. Everybody outside of Kansas City and Buffalo need to shut up. Flat out. Newsflash, shut up. Why? Because you guys in Cincinnati, Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, among other places, and Dallas, should be happy you guys have a franchise quarterback and quit worrying about where the heck they're ranking. I mean, they got the top two right. That's a no-brainer. Patrick Mahomes is still so far high in the clouds you can't see him. He's still number one. Josh Allen's the best quarterback, not named Patrick Mahomes. That's number two. And those two they got right. That's a no-brainer. I mean, everyone makes this big hubbub over where the quarterback is ranked, why they think they're should be higher or should be lower, or who's overrated, who's underrated. Newsflash, it's just a ranking system. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, if you guys have a problem with a ranking system, y'all need to get checked for CTE, because this ranking system doesn't mean anything right now in the off season, because we haven't even played a game in the 2025 season yet. I mean, it's based off play as of last season. I mean, I haven't seen the entire list, but I see Philly fans running their yaps about why Jalen Hurts apparently is ranked number 9th. Bengals fans, being Bengals fans per usual, those are the biggest group of cowards. Baltimore fans, putting I guess one individual had Lamar Jackson number 6, which I don't necessarily agree with, but is it worth complaining about? Not necessarily. I mean, you guys get too fixated on what you read on these networks, what you read on these mobile devices, among many other things. But is it really worth complaining about? Because you guys have your franchise quarterbacks. I mean, could you want anybody else to replace what you have? No. So why are you guys yapping about what ESPN does with their rankings at quarterback? I mean, everyone's going to have their opinion, good, bad, pretty, or ugly, like it or hate it. But that's how it is, and that's the nature of the beast. So that's what we have with this so-called ESPN ranking system that came out today with the quarterbacks. I'm not necessarily a fan of it because ESPN never gets anything right, as we all know. But anytime you open your mouth, you're giving ESPN what they want. Why don't you just shut up and just wait for the season to start, and then we can start the debates at that point. And then we have Dallas fans want to get involved in this. Problem is, you have the highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now, who's been an intentional underachiever in Dak Prescott. Keywords being intentional underachiever, because that's what he is. I mean, you guys act like he's going to be the second coming of Troy Aikman when he isn't. I mean, he's not even the second coming of Tony Romo, for crying out loud. Not even worth being in that conversation. So you guys can just chill it down there in Big D. I mean, forget it. He's not even worthy in that conversation. You have no room. But when it comes to all of these QB rankings, can y'all please just chill out? Because nothing worth yapping about, nothing worth complaining about. You have a problem with what the heck the media says? Turn off the goddamn TV, because it's not going to get you anywhere. No way, no how. Why? Because that's how it is. So that's what we have here with these ESPN releasing of the QB rankings going into the season of 2025. I'm not even going to entertain it because it's not even worth it. Plain and simple. So I'll move on from this like everybody else should, because it's not even worth it. We'll worry about QB rankings down the line when the season goes. I won't even partake in it, because the only thing I know is Mahomes is number 1, and the rest of it is up for debate. That's the only thing I can conclude with all of this. I mean, I know Mahomes just lost the Super Bowl, didn't necessarily play all that great in 2024 from his standards, but still was more than good enough to get his team to a Super Bowl appearance. And he still has the 3 Super Bowls, the 3 Super Bowl MVPs. That alone puts him head and shoulders above everyone else until further notice. Opportunities are there to basically try and close a gap, but we'll see if that happens anytime soon. But as long as Patrick Mahomes is number in the top in that regard. That's how it's always going to be. Now to a little disturbing news out of Cleveland, and this is the epitome of why that franchise is what it is. This was the draft pick, if I can pronounce his name correctly, Quinshon Jenkins, arrested on a domestic violence charge over the weekend. I mean, I read the reports. I'm not even going to get into it. I don't use this platform to discuss that kind of a derogatory stuff because it's not who I am. But it's the epitome of what Andrew Berry of the Cleveland Browns has become. And what has happened is he brings in these players with these so-called track records, pays them, gives them the contracts, and we see what happens. I mean, do not forget what he did with acquiring Deshaun Watson after what he had in Houston as he picked him up. It's more a reflection of who Andrew Berry is as their general manager, and Andrew Berry is nothing more than a walking disgrace. You should know better than to get something like this. Now, I get it. It's a homegrown thing, being playing for Ohio State, going to play for the Cleveland Browns. But when you do something like that, and you as a general manager know it, and you still pay the guy, and you still want him on your roster, what does it say about you at the end of the day over there in Cleveland? I mean, there's a few others on there. I can't think of the names off the top of my head that have it. But this is a bad look for Andrew Berry, because here we go again. Same thing happened 3 years ago with Deshaun Watson when they made that trade, and now we have this with Jenkins being drafted. It's a terrible look for you to do something like this. You draft a guy and you still want to keep him on your roster. Everyone's going to say the crazy verbiage. Let's wait till the legal details play out. There's an official police report that's out there that's saying something happened. Unless you guys read the report, I'm not even going to discuss it on my platform because everybody knows I'm against talking about that stuff in graphic nature. But the report is out there. Read it. If you still think it's just a case of let the legal system play out, you need to check for CTE, because that was just a disgrace and disgusting what Jenkins did on that police report, because that's all I need to know for proof what he's guilty of. I mean, something is going to happen out of this. Certainly, NFL is going to look into it once everything comes out. But even then, it's a terrible look for Andrew Berry to draft this guy knowing what this guy was capable of and what just happened, with this Mr. Jenkins. He knew it. That's why he went ahead and drafted him anyway. This is Deshaun Watson, deja vu all over again. And here we go again in Cleveland, because Andrew Berry just wants to pay crooked individuals like this. Terrible. And they wonder why the Cleveland Browns are the laughingstock of the AFC North. That's why. I mean, the Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers have had their share of guys like that too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not letting them off the hook. But at least they know when it's time to cut their bait. I mean, we saw Baltimore just do it with Justin Tucker. Pittsburgh had their share of guys like that. They sent him out the door. The Bengals, we know that for the longest time, had guys. They finally cleaned house and sent that out the door. Cleveland wants to invite that garbage. That's why they're a laughingstock. Period. Some NFL teams also, but my focus is on the AFC North because they've had a history of this. And of course, news broke earlier today. Shout out to Garrett Wilson, standout wide receiver from Ohio State, getting the $130 million contract extension, $90 million guaranteed. One of the better receivers out there in a year, or the last couple of years, where the wide receiver market had players being played all over the place. He's now on that list that includes guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, among others. Well-deserved contract. Now he has Justin Fields, as a fellow Ohio State alum, to throw him the ball. And I expect him to have a solid year this season for the New York Jets. Very good receiver. Stand out, of course, during his time at Ohio State. Well-deserved contract, well paid. And you can see a lot of things about it. But we know what's happened to the wide receiver market. It really started not this season, but last season when Jamar Chase, last season when Justin Jefferson got his contract extension. You had a feeling wide receivers are going to be paid all over the place, and it's continued. Last year, of course, was Justin Jefferson. This year, it's two guys, of course, Jamar Chase in Cincinnati and Garrett Wilson over at Ohio State. Standout receivers getting paid, well-deserved contracts. And nothing more to add about that. It's basically well-deserved. Now to the media news, because everyone, I guess, has a problem with the media. I guess I'll chime in my 2 cents, because this one I saw coming a long time ago, but maybe it should have happened long before it happened, long before it should have. I should check that long after it should have, because this should have happened long time ago. It was FS1 canceling their garbage shows. I mean, I can't think of the names off the top of my head. Of course, among the people involved in it, of course, were Joy Taylor and Emmanuel Ocho. Well, first of all, those shows are just garbage. I mean, they regurgitate the same storyline week in and week out, day in and day out. Like every 5 minutes, it's the same storyline, regurgitating the same, opinion, same topic, which is basically just staled out. But everybody knows what happened a year or so ago, when the reports came out about what took place behind closed doors, when it involved Joy Taylor, Emmanuel Ocho, and among many others. Should have been canned then. It should have been canned then. Too late, but it should have been canned then. Ratings were exceptionally a downturn anyway, especially go back to when, during the show Undisputed, after the near clash between Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless. We know what happened with that one, and really, that show tanked. And after Sharpe left, they basically got rid of the end of the contract of Skip Bayless in that show. But this epitome of what's happened with sports media shows all over the place, not just on FS1, but all over the place. When you consider the fact it's the same storyline, it's the same, topic that's always regurgitated every 5 minutes, whether it be on the social media apps or on actual television. I mean, they always say journalism is dead. It's been dead since the invention of social media. I mean, we knew that was what's going to happen at some point. And for these 3 shows, for some of the characters and the ugly wanks they had on those shows, for them to finally can it, basically 2 years after its expiration dates, it was about time. I mean, we know what happened with Joy Taylor and Emmanuel Ocho. It's on the all the sites. What happened? It was released in a civil court hearing with Fox and everything else. That didn't help their cause, obviously. Honestly, Joy Taylor should have been fired on the spot. I don't know why she wasn't. But that's what's happened with sports shows, and basically all the sports networks, basically all about their own storylines and what their narratives are, and basically telling people what they want to hear as opposed to what they need to hear. And as a result, that's why all this happened. And now you have people behind the doors doing what Joy Taylor did to try and climb up the corporate ladder. This was coming. A little bit past his expiration date, but it is what it is at this point. So they all can shoot. Joy Taylor, Emmanuel Ocho, LaShawn McCoy, Craig Carlton, among many other idiots on the shows who have some of the most moronic and idiotic things they've always had to say. And basically, good riddance to them. Because was all that worth it at the end of the day? You guys lost jobs. Granted, the shows weren't all that great to begin with, but it doesn't help whatever you guys did in that civil court report that came out was basically validated why this should have been done a long time ago. So, adios. We all can see you another time. Now that, guys, Joy Taylor was posting some workout video after the announcement of her getting canned by FS1, which don't know what that does for her right now. And of course, Emmanuel Ocho comes out and says, I'm going to leave it to the hands of God, or whatever the frick he wanted to say. But it doesn't matter. You guys did what you did a few years back in that civil court hearing that came out, the civil documents that came out. That's why this happened. Actually, it should have happened then when it came out, but we know how that story goes. But FS1 might actually be worth watching ever. Be back up here. Maybe FS1 could be worth watching again, because now those shows don't basically saturate your television sets. Maybe you can actually watch something of significance. Maybe get some real shows where people can actually know what they're talking about, and actually let them talk about what they want to talk about and what needs to be talked about, versus the same similar topics week in and week out. The show was on borrowed time anyways. Matter of time before it hit the grave, and it did. And to what took place Saturday night. FC Cincinnati. I wanted to come out here and celebrate with you. You started out good, but what happened? You laid down, took the Columbus Crew. You laid down on your home field in your hell is real battle, and you was cooking all along going into this game. You was rolling. You laid down for the Columbus Crew on your home field after you got out to the fast lead. I mean, you just rolled over and laid down. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. You rolled over and laid down. How the hell do you roll over and lay down to your in-state rival, basically 2 hours north of you, and just let them do what they did to you on your home field the way they did it? It wasn't the fact you did it that happened. It's the fact you let them happen after you got the early 2-0 lead. You let it happen. That's a difference. You let it happen. How? It's your in-state rival. You had a chance to actually make a mark because that team has basically had your number, especially going back to 2 years ago when you had the conference final home game against them, and they basically did the same thing to you then. You had the early lead, you rolled over, and you let them beat you. How do you let that happen? Keyword is let, because that's what happened. You let it happen. I mean, I was going to be up here to celebrate. I was actually cheering along when you guys got the early lead. You had that under control, but you just gradually and slowly lay down to the Columbus Crew on your home field and let them just control the game the rest of the way and beat the brakes off of you. I mean, a 4-0 scoreboard doesn't not sound much, but in soccer, it is. Actually, it could have sounded like 7-2 or 8-2 because after you scored those 2 goals, you laid down. You flat out lay down and let Columbus do anything and everything they wanted to do, and it's something no one over there can have a legit answer to. Why? You let it happen. You just let it happen. I didn't say it happened. I said you let it happen. That's a key word. You allowed for it. You used no effort. There was nothing other than Matt Miazga being an idiot again, because that's who Matt Miazga is. But you let it happen, and you just toss away the momentum you was gaining going into this particular matchup. And guess who's coming into town the day after tomorrow? Messi and Inter Miami. Get your head out of here, you know what, and get to it. Because you're going to have your work cut out for you Wednesday when Miami comes into town. And I mean, you're going to have your work cut out for you. It's your second straight game at home. You blew it once. Don't blow it twice. That's what I got to say about that. Now to some weird news that took place out of the college of football field. This was Teddy Bridgewater, the one-time NFL quarterback. Now, I believe he's a coach or something at Miami Northwestern, being suspended for so-called improbable benefits or whatever the frick that word they want to use. So basically, you're from everything I read, you're basically providing people with food and Uber rides, among many other things. And you're suspending a guy for just doing a goodwill act. You suspended Teddy Bridgewater for a goodwill act. That's why the NCAA is a joke. That is why the NCAA is a joke. There's no benefits that came out of it. It's just a guy providing kids and young adults with necessarily stuff so they can have the necessary needs for whatever it is they needed. That's what it is. And that's why the NCAA, once again, proves themselves to be a joke. And whatever the heck, or whoever was suspended them, prove themselves to be a joke. Plain and simple. I mean, they wanted to take care of these kids and adults, and that's what Teddy Bridgewater was doing. He essentially was suspended for just having a good heart. And the NCAA continues to prove why they're heartless. Another case of this. Shame on whoever did this to this man, because he was doing something positive, something to help everybody out, and they needed someone like this to be a goodwill human being. That's what Teddy Bridgewater was doing, and as a result, somebody had a problem with it, and out they went. That was just terrible. If I'm affiliated with the institution and in the NCAA, I'm fully embarrassed, and that's why everyone's had the outrage as it is. I've seen the pour and the outcry that took place, and it is terrible. And it's terrible. I'm with everyone that says it was wrong what was done. It really is, and I'm taking the high road when I say it was wrong, because I got to think of another word for it. But that's what it was at the end of the day. Plain and simple. So what was done to Teddy Bridgewater? Still continue to do your good work, because somebody was just jealous that you were just a good person. That's what it came down to. That's exactly why what was done to him today, the disgraceful act that was done to Teddy Bridgewater today. And that really was disgraceful. Nothing more needs to be said. I guess good deeds don't go unpunished. Apparently, that's what happened here. A good deed just went thoroughly punished, and it's terrible. Happy birthday. Shout out to one of the icons of our sport, the legendary Julio Cesar Chavez. It was his birthday Saturday, 63rd birthday. For a 5 or 6 year period, had the distinction of the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. Arguably the greatest Mexican boxer of all time. Of course, the late Salvador Sanchez might have had this thing wrapped up had it not been for his tragedy. One of the premier warriors of his time who combined will and skill to his ascension of the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. Fought and beat basically everyone until the Pernell Whitaker fight in 1993. Heart, warrior, chin, whatever you want to say, have at it. Because he was certainly, his place in history is secure. I mean, he basically wrapped it. Maybe you can say elevated that stature with the Mildred Taylor win, albeit with all the wildness that took place in that fight. But the way he would just systematically break you down from the body to the head, bust up those tissues, was something no one of that era could do better. And you talk about that run from the Edward Rosario fight all the way to the night when he sold out Azteca Stadium in 1993 when he obliterated Greg Haugen in front of 135,000. That was his era right there. And the only one that came close was Pernell Whitaker, and Whitaker really came on to that super fight in 1993. But that should tell you just the run he had for that 5 to 5.5 year period. That basically was his era at that time. Nobody was touching him. I mean, a lot of people nitpick his resume. I mean, you're going a little too hard. You're trying a little too hard to try and discredit what he did in this boxing business. But still, the fact his place in history is secure at this point. You can't take it away from him. I mean, if you really think the way that you guys do, using such words as overrated or overhyped, get checked for CTE because you're not a legit fight fan or a fight knower. It is what it is at this point. And speaking of Pernell Whitaker, it was 6 years ago today that the world unfortunately lost Sweet Pea in his hometown of Norfolk, Virginia. Unfortunate circumstance where he was crossing the street. A truck who didn't see him, hit him as he was crossing and was pronounced dead on the scene. I remember this simply because one day I wake up and there was a lot of silence in the boxing community that they're saying that there was an incident in Norfolk, Virginia. Because when you think of Norfolk, Virginia at that time, you thought of Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. Makes you wonder what happened. And then when his son broke out the news that he was the one that was found dead on that street at Norfolk when he was hit, that was basically the day that the entire boxing world was silent. I mean, there wasn't much going on. You're talking about the first fighter in the 3-belt era to go undisputed. The first to have that undisputed distinction since Roberto Duran about 12 years earlier. After the Chavez fight, went to the distinction of what he wanted to have, which was the best fighter pound for pound. Did that from 93 to 97. Won world titles at the legit world championship at 140. Legit championship at 147 when he went to Madison Square Garden and beat Buddy McGirt to achieve that distinction. And when you talk about the art of the sweet science, for his time, nobody did it better than Pernell Whitaker. The art of hit and not getting hit and the art of use of ring generalship, that was Pernell Whitaker for his time. A member of the 1984 Olympic gold medal team that include guys like Evander Holyfield, Mildred Taylor, Mark Breland, and Tyrell Biggs. Had probably the worst decision of boxing history when he was robbed against Jose Luis Ramirez in 88 over in Paris, later avenged. Maybe the most unique thing with Pernell Whitaker is when you talk about his 2 losses in his draw to Ramirez, De La Hoya, and Chavez, you can probably argue he won all 3 fights. Maybe the most unique thing of his career was probably not having the best performances where he wasn't given a legit credit to have his hand raised in those 3 fights. That's probably what made him unique more than anything else. But if you want to say what was really his biggest win, maybe just those 3 fights where he basically put on Pernell Whitaker as performances, but he was victimized by boxing politics. Because boxing, we know about how boxing politics can be, especially for a fighter of his style. Turns off the boxing intelligentsia off the wrong way because no one liked it as much. But that's what we had with Sweet Pea Whitaker. And it was unfortunate that what took place 6 years ago today. Of course, he had 2 fights later on in his career with Felix Trinidad and Carlos Bojorquez, where both were legit losses. But even then, his legacy was secure at that point. You're talking about top 5 or top 6 all-time great lightweight, next to guys like Roberto Duran, Henry Armstrong, Benny Leonard, Joe Gantz, even throwing a couple guys like Ike Williams and Tony Canzanori, just to name a boatload. Pernell Whitaker's place in lightweight history is right there with those. We can put the name undisputed next to your name in that weight class. You're in that category. That's what he did in 1990 when he flatlined Juan Nazario with 1 punch. May God rest his soul, Pernell Whitaker, a genuine all-time great, probably the top 20 or 25, somewhere up there. In that range. I swear some people don't like pure boxing and pure sweet science like Pernell Whitaker came around. And people today wouldn't appreciate or respect what this guy did because he was a thing of beauty. And a big shout out to Hamzah Sheerah, who over the weekend did the boxing world a favor. Got rid of the biggest clown in our sport, Edgar Berlanga. I mean, he just didn't he just beat him. I mean, he beat him down and bum rushed him. Marked him, I think it was like 5 or 6 rounds. Floored him twice in the end of the 2nd. Beat him up more twice in the 5th. Beat him up in the 6th. Fight was over at that point. And basically, Sheeraz got the big win. Gets rid of probably the biggest clown in our sport right now, and Edgar Berlanga. And hopefully we don't have to hear from that freaking moron ever again, because that's what Edgar Berlanga is. Try to prop up a rematch with Canelo Alvarez after getting shut out. Really? And you laid an egg against Sheeraz. You laid an egg against Sheeraz, and you best basically get out of the sport. I mean, that's all that needs to be said. You've been irrelevant your whole career. Somehow you got a shot against Canelo Alvarez, which, still is an eyebrow raiser to many of us in the boxing community. But the way you're trying to prop up this fight and the press conference, how you went at Oscar De La Hoya, throwing money all over the place, and you laid an egg against Sheeraz. You laid an egg against Sheeraz. Not Canelo Alvarez. You laid an egg against Sheeraz. Think about that. You laid an egg against Hamzah Sheerah. You just need Edgar Berlanga needs to just get out after that. If you're laying an egg against fighters like Hamzah Sheerah, you don't belong in the sport. Period. I mean, we're not talking about Christian Nabili. We're not talking about going up to light heavyweight against Bivol or Baturviev, or going down to middleweight against a Denzel Bentley. You laid an egg against Hamzah Sheerah. Give me a break. Just get out and stay out. I mean, Oscar De La Hoya trolled you after the fight. The problem is he didn't troll you enough. You're just a walking disgrace at this point. And I close on what was on the positive side of the sport, what took place 45 years ago today in Atlantic City. It was the rematch between Matthew Saad Muhammad and Yaqui Lopez. And you guys want barn burners? This one was one. Let's start with this. We talk about Hamzah Sheerah. When you talk about Matthew Saad Muhammad, you're talking about one of the premier light heavyweights at that time. When you won the world we talk about when he won the world title from Marvin Johnson, and basically made several successful title defenses. Now, when you talk about the career of Matthew Saad Muhammad, a lot of solid wins, won the world title, made a couple defenses against a standout out of the UK, John Conte. Do some research on him. Very, very solid light heavyweight at that time. And basically got another win or two before we had this rematch coming up with, we talk about the standout Yaqui Lopez. Lopez himself had a couple world title shots, failed to achieve the goal, most notably twice against the standout Victor Galindez. This was a rematch of what took place about a year and a half before for a North American Championship, a TKO won by Matthew Saad Muhammad. And in this rematch, basically, it had all the goods and then some. Matthew Saad Muhammad and Yaqui Lopez was trading blows, especially the first half of the fight. Fast forward to round 8, for a round that had the distinction of the greatest round ever at that point. When you consider what took place between Matthew Saad Muhammad and Yaqui Lopez in that round, it was like Hagler Hearns round 1 before we knew it. I mean, that's what round 8 was. And as the fight wore on, it got better and better and better until the championship will of Matthew Saad Muhammad gradually broke down and just wore out the tough, durable Yaqui Lopez to get a TKO win in the 14th round in an epic classic. I mean, both guys let it all hang out. There's a reason why they called Matthew Saad Muhammad Miracle Matt, because Yaqui looked like for several times in this fight, Yaqui Lopez was going to break through and finally win the world championship, because he had Matthew Saad Muhammad going for a while. But Matthew Saad Muhammad buckled down, dug deep, got the stoppage win, flowing Yaqui Lopez 4 times in the 14th round to retain the light heavyweight championship in what was an epic, epic classic between two standout light heavyweights. But it was basically their end game, because they both just beat whatever was left out of this fight out of each other. But they had a 2-fight series where both guys were just give and take, and they just give and took both ways. But it was a case of, unfortunately for Yaqui Lopez, not being able to get over the hump, because he had many opportunities to win the light heavyweight title. Not just this, but the 2 against Victor Galindez, and couldn't get it. Probably one of the fighters widely have the distinction of the greatest not to win a world title, even though he had many opportunities for it. Although Sam Langford, albeit with a different set of criteria, might have that distinction himself as well. But for Matthew Saad Muhammad, a solid run of that light heavyweight division, made 4 more title defenses against fighters, especially a guy like Murray Sutherland, where he successfully defended that title. Before he had 2 tough losses to the standout Dwight Muhammad Qawi in 2 epic classic fights with that one. Qawi stopped him both times in basically 2 real good fights. But for that brief period, when you think of the light heavyweight division at that time, from the back end of the 70s going into the early 80s, Matthew Saad Muhammad, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, Victor Galindez, John Conte, Yaqui Lopez, of course, Michael Spinks, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, Marvin Johnson, among the many others. That was a deep, deep era where a lot of those guys went head-to-head with each other at the purest peak in that weight class, at a time when that division was really, really golden. Think about all those names for just a second and going at it. You want to talk about a real golden era of depth in the boxing world and the particular weight class? That light heavyweight division from the back end of the 70s to the early part of the 80s, that really was it. And all those guys, you can throw a couple of other names in there also. But when you think about Matthew Saad Muhammad, Yaqui Lopez, among many others, Michael Spinks, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, can't think of the other ones off the top of my head. Marvin Johnson, John Conte, just to name several of them. You had a deep, deep golden era of standout light heavyweights going at it at the elite level. That was when that division was golden. Actually, maybe a little after the reign of Bob Foster ended, because Bob Foster was tired of the boxing politics. He said, screw it, vacated the belts, and just flat out retired. But after Bob Foster retired, the light heavyweight division got deep, and there were a lot of guys that were fighting each other for greatness, supremacy, and to have the distinction to being called the best light heavyweight of that time. That's what those guys did. Of course, the end, of course, with Michael Spinks going undisputed and cleaning out that era. But what a deep run that was. And it was a real deep, a terrific era at the light heavyweight division. Because we talk about some of the guys today, couldn't hold a candlelight to what those guys did at the back end of the 70s. Because look at the names, read the stories, look at the resumes. They went at it, a lot of them went at it against each other for the most part. Some others didn't materialize for various reasons. But when you think of that era, Matthew Saad Muhammad, Marvin Johnson, John Conte, Victor Galindez, Yaqui Lopez, Michael Spinks, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, several others in there, and how they went at it of one another in some historically terrific fights in that light heavyweight division, it's head and shoulders among anything that took place in that division's history. And of course, it was 45 years ago today the 1980 fight of the year that took place in New Jersey, the rematch between Matthew Saad Muhammad and Yaqui Lopez, probably the gold standard and the apex of that era when those two went at it, and Matthew Saad Muhammad having to dig deep to retain his light heavyweight championship against a tough, gritty, durable, tough SOB in Yaqui Lopez, flooring him 4 times to successfully defend his title in his own basically hometown area. He was from Philly, but not too far from there was where the fight took place in New Jersey. Just a terrific, terrific fight between two very terrific light heavyweights at a time when the light heavyweight division was really, really golden. From the back end of the 70s to the early 80s. Just a terrific era. 2 terrific fighters put on the fight of the year in 1980, and it was Matthew Saad Muhammad successfully defending his title. Of course, after that, he had his downturn because the fight took a lot out of Matthew Saad Muhammad. The 2 tough losses to Kawi, no shame in that, because Dwight Muhammad Kawi is an all-time great light heavyweight. Had an inconsistent career the rest of the way. Did fight for the cruiserweight title before giving it up when he lost to Carlos de Leon. But Matthew Saad Muhammad was a tough fighter, one of the better fighters of this particular era that took place during those times. And everybody wants to talk about Bivol and Baturviev in this particular category. Neither of them had to go through what these guys had to go through. I mean, you want to talk about a light heavyweight gauntlet? That was a gauntlet. I mean, talk about from the end of the Bob Foster era, which again he didn't just avoid anybody. He threw the belts away because he was tired of boxing politics. Because it was at a time when boxing politics started to take over the sport in the worst way. And Bob Foster said, "F it," threw the belts away, walked away from the sport. And all of these guys in the back end, we talk about Conte, Galindez, Matthew Saad Muhammad, Marvin Johnson, Michael Spinks, and Dwight Muhammad Kawi had their own mini tournament almost. And as a result of that mini tournament, you had some great fights in a golden era of the light heavyweight division. That's what that back end of the 70s and early 80s was way back in the day. Just a terrific era. And it was concluded, basically the apex of it was when Matthew Saad Muhammad and Yaqui Lopez, the second of their 2 all-time great fights. You talk about classic wars. We can talk about the word war in the sport a lot. This second fight was an epitome of a war because that's what we had. It was a case of a lot of momentum shifts, a lot of blood both ways. But at the end, Matthew Saad Muhammad turned on that extra gear and stopped a very tough and durable Yaqui Lopez, who was driven to get over the hump to win that light heavyweight championship, but couldn't. Lopez was floored 4 times in the 14th round. And even though Lopez got up and just kept trying, referee had no other choice but to stop the fight. And that's why what we had 45 years ago, it was rightly billed as the 1980 fight of the year. Ring Magazine gave it that distinction after the fight, perfectly deserved, because that's what that was. You don't see many fights in that division, in that weight class anymore, like we had with this particular fight. Because that stands alone, and that era in the light heavyweight division will forever stand alone as it is. Just a terrific all-around fight. I mean, you guys are so fixated on guys like Benavidez and Bivol and Baturviev. The footage is out there. I recommend you read about guys like Matthew Saad Muhammad and Yaqui Lopez. Real intriguing stories with 2 intriguing fighters and who put on 2 dazzling displays of great fights at a time when the light heavyweight division was hot. Of course, when we talk about the end of that era, basically the end of the era was cleaned out by Michael Spinks, top 5 all-time great light heavyweight. But we talk about the middle of that era, a deep era with terrific fighters. Because I can talk about eras with all the divisions, all the fighters. I could go details if I really wanted to. But just for this particular night and for this distinction, for what took place 45 years ago today, it belonged to the light heavyweight division, and it had a deep class of great fighters going at it for light heavyweight championships all over the place. And it was Saad Muhammad over Yaqui Lopez, probably the apex of that. And Matthew Saad Muhammad had one of the more underrated, better runs in the history of that division. We talk about beating Lopez twice, beating a guy like Murray Sutherland, winning the title from Marvin Johnson, and of course, the 2 wins over the stand-up from the UK, John Conte. I mean, no one's going to put him in the all-time great, or probably the greatest light heavyweight of all time, because that belongs to some higher level light heavyweights. But his run was underrated, one of the more underrated light heavyweights of that time, and it was a terrific fighter. I mean, that's what Matthew Saad Muhammad was. Same for Yaqui Lopez. The misfortune for Lopez was he could never get over the hump to win a title. Not just losing this one, he lost a subsequent one later. Had the 2 chances against Victor Galindez where he couldn't, overtake the tough Argentine Galindez. Both times Galindez won those fights. But when Yaqui Lopez got in that ring, all excitement. That's what he was. The distinction, maybe the greatest to have never won the title. Despite opportunities to win it, he had many chances and held his own against Muhammad and Galindez. But he has the distinction of never having won a world title in that weight class. But still, when he got in that ring, always gave his all. Him and Matthew Saad Muhammad. What a golden era of the light heavyweight division that was. Actually, if you guys follow the Top Rank channel, it has it posted on their website as the free full fight replay of the day, and it's a must watch. We want about 30 to 40 minutes of your time to watch a terrific fight. That's when you should be watching. Both guys just gave it their all, but the determination and the will of Matthew Saad Muhammad poured out for the second time in their 2-fight series, despite getting all he can handle from Yaqui Lopez. What a terrific series. And I close this with one last thing. I don't like to talk about this on my platform, but this needs to be brought up. We have people in the boxing community trying to stick up for Tank Davis after his alleged act that took place over the weekend. Right? Know the story? Apparently, he wound up behind bars because he couldn't stay away from his baby mama. And a report was filed. I guess he put his hands on her. And there are people who are trying to excuse it. Well, it's not the first rodeo with Tank Davis. We know this. But let's get something else out of the way. Maybe this is why we're not seeing any hype about his upcoming rematch with Lamont Roach. We know what happened in the first fight against Lamont Roach. He got it given to him. The reason why it didn't happen was because a mishap by the referee, a blatant mishap, which was caught on audio. We saw the whole story with that one. And basically, Tank Davis fans, they are trying to defend anything this guy does. Some people need to look at themselves in the mirror because it's not the first rodeo with him or any of his fans. Maybe there's a reason why we haven't seen him as active as we should have. And maybe there's a reason why we haven't seen him against the top guys like Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, among many others. Maybe this is the reason. He doesn't know how to keep his nose clean. And we have people who are fine with it. There's a problem. That's why I walked away from a lot of you guys not too long ago. You guys enable this behavior. You guys make this stuff where you try to say there's a false report that was filed. You guys are trying to say this is all about female drama. It's not just the first time Tank Davis has done this. This happened not too long ago in his home city of Baltimore, Maryland. But you guys need to chill out because this is who Tank Davis is at the end of the day. A lot of us, yours truly being one of them, try to tell you what Tank Davis is made of. And now reality is kicking in. The guy's going to be 30 here soon. We haven't seen him in a big fight. I mean, I'm not even giving credit for beating Ryan Garcia because we know what happened to Garcia when he fought Rolly Romero. That just diminished that. We haven't seen him in a real quality fight. We haven't seen this guy active enough. And the people that are still trying to defend what he did over the weekend and wind up with a mugshot on his record again because he can't stay away from the mother of his child says a lot about Tank Davis and Tank Davis fans at the end of the day. At some point, all y'all need to really grow up because it's not the first rodeo with him. He did it once before with the same person. And apparently, I guess some kind of a protective order was placed, and apparently that was violated. Remember the last time I think in the home city of Baltimore, he's sitting in a cell for a while. And it's like he's going to be sitting for a minute here unless he's been already released, which I personally don't know. But at this point, the enabling of this guy needs to stop because this is the same rodeo again, and we have fans again defending this guy, and that's enabling. That's been a problem with him and his fans and the fight community, and a lot of people who aren't fans of his are enabling it also. That needs to end. right here. Because if he did what he did, and as a report said it did, and I just read it not too long ago, if he did exactly that, it's time for this guy to sit for a while, and it's time for everybody in the fan base to just simply have it dished out to them also. Because you guys seem to be fine with what Tank Davis does outside the ring, and if this is not a wake-up call for you guys, I don't know what is. At this point, everyone affiliated with Tank Davis, newsflash, shut up. This guy just put his hands on a woman again. This guy doesn't want to fight legit opposition. He wants to protect a paper championship. And you guys are the reasons why this is happening. You guys are enabling it. You guys are coddling it. A lot of you guys are really sexist, and sorry for the word use, but that's what a lot of you guys are, because every time he does something to a woman, you guys blame the woman for it. You guys are the problem in the boxing community when it comes to Tank Davis, and that is why this has happened to him again. And it's got to stop. I mean, the less we talk about him, the better. The more the boxing community distances itself from Tank Davis and Tank Davis fans, the better. Quit talking about Tank Davis. Quit talking about his fans. Shut up. Move on, because we have better things to talk about in the sport. Because I already did that a long time ago. But you wanted your 5 minutes of fame and your newsflash shut up segment. I just gave it, and now I'm done. Stay away from talking about Tank Davis and Tank Davis fans, especially the coward Ray Jackson, who we know he's the biggest enabler of Tank Davis, because he watches. The guy fantasizes Tank Davis in the worst way possible. We all know this. Even when he's on his phone on the forklift, wherever the frick he drives a forklift at. But enough is enough. Tank Davis is a cancer to boxing. He is toxic to boxing. Same with Tank Davis fans, including Ray Jackson. It's time to distance ourselves from them and move on, because we have big fights coming up, especially the big one in the UK this weekend. That's what we should be focusing on, not Tank Davis. Plain and simple. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I hope everyone had themselves a wonderful rest of the 14th of July, 2025. I will be back at it tomorrow. If you missed any of this episode, you can catch the audio replays on the Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify apps. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in life. Always take care of yourself first before you take care of anything else. If you do take care of yourself first, good things will come your way. But if you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Always focus on you and yourself first. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and I will see you tomorrow.